The transport ship Meridian dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the New Eden system. Captain Sarah Chen stood on the bridge, expecting to see the usual cluster of communication signals from the colony. Instead, her screen showed nothing but silence. "That's strange," said Lieutenant Marcus Webb, the communications officer. He tapped his console, frowning. "I'm not getting anything. No traffic control, no civilian broadcasts, nothing." Sarah felt a cold weight settle in her stomach. New Eden was home to 2.3 million people. It was one of the most successful agricultural colonies humanity had established in the Outer Rim territories. The planet produced enough grain and vegetables to feed a dozen worlds. A place like that didn't just go quiet. "Try all frequencies," she ordered. "Emergency channels, everything." Marcus worked his station for several minutes. The only sound on the bridge was the soft beeping of equipment. Finally, he looked up at Sarah, his face pale. "Captain, there's nothing." Complete radio silence across all bands. Sarah made her decision quickly. "Take us in. Full sensor sweep. Battle stations, just in case." The Meridian was not a warship. It was a survey vessel, designed for mapping and exploration. But Sarah had served in the Terran Navy before taking this civilian posting, and her instincts were screaming that something was very wrong. As they approached the planet, the sensors began picking up data. What they showed made no sense at first. The third officer, a young woman named Alice Park, stared at her readings and checked them twice before speaking. "Captain, I'm detecting massive thermal signatures across the entire planet. The surface temperature is reading 50 degrees higher than normal." 50 degrees? Sarah moved to look at the screen herself. "That's impossible. Check for equipment malfunction." "Already did, ma'am. Sensors are working perfectly." Alice pulled up visual imaging. Oh my God. The main screen flickered to life, showing New Eden below them. Except it wasn't the green and blue world Sarah remembered from the colony files. The planet looked wrong. The continents were the right shape, but where there should have been cities and farmland, there was only darkness and red glowing patches. Sarah had seen enough combat footage to recognize what she was looking at. "Those are glass fields," she whispered. "The surface has been melted." The bridge went completely silent. Everyone understood what that meant. Glass fields only formed under extreme heat, the kind of heat that came from orbital bombardment. "Take us into low orbit," Sarah said, her voice steady despite the horror growing inside her. "I want detailed scans of every major population center." For the next 6 hours, the Meridian mapped the destruction. New Providence, the capital city where 800,000 people had lived, was a crater 5 miles wide. The residential districts had simply ceased to exist. The farming communities in the northern continent were fields of black ash and melted rock. The southern mining towns had been hit so hard that the ground itself had turned to liquid, and then cooled into twisted glass sculptures. Marcus found evidence of the colony's last moments in the orbital debris. Fragments of defensive satellites, destroyed escape pods, and the wreckage of 3 civilian transports that had tried to flee. The attack had been systematic and thorough. Nothing had been allowed to escape. "I'm picking up an energy signature," Alice said suddenly. "It's faint, but it's definitely artificial." "From the debris field. Can you identify it?" Sarah asked. Alice worked her console, running the signature through their database. When the results came back, her hand started shaking. "Captain, it's a match for Corvash weapons technology. Their plasma cannons leave a specific radiation pattern. This is definitely Corvash." The name sent a ripple of tension through the bridge crew. The Corvash Dominion was an aggressive empire that controlled a large section of space on the other side of human territory. They had been making territorial claims in this region for years, but there had been no open conflict. Humanity had tried to maintain peaceful relations despite the Corvash reputation for violence. Sarah knew she needed to report this immediately. "Marcus, prepare a priority message for Terran Command. Full data package with all sensor logs. Tell them New Eden has been completely destroyed by Corvash orbital bombardment. No survivors detected." As Marcus prepared the message, Sarah looked at the planet on her screen. 2.3 million people. Families, children, farmers who had never held a weapon in their lives. All of them dead. She thought about the families, back on Earth and Mars, who were waiting for messages from their loved ones on New Eden. People who didn't know yet that everyone they cared about had been murdered. The message was sent, and then there was nothing to do but wait. Sarah ordered the Meridian to maintain orbit and continue scanning, though she knew they wouldn't find any survivors. The attack had been too complete, too thorough. 3 days later, a fleet arrived. Not just 1 or 2 ships, but 20 Terran Navy vessels led by Admiral Richard Zhang aboard the battlecruiser Defiant. Sarah had served under Zhang during the corporate wars, and she knew him as a calm, careful strategist. But when his face appeared on her screen for the video conference, she barely recognized him. His expression was carved from stone, his eyes burning with cold fury. "Captain Chen, your report has been verified by Navy intelligence," Zhang said. "We're taking over the investigation. You and your crew have done well. This information may have just changed the course of human history." Sarah felt confused. "Changed history, sir? How?" Zhang's expression became even harder. "Because the Galactic Council is already trying to bury this. They've issued a statement calling it a tragic misunderstanding and asking both sides to pursue diplomatic channels. The Corvash have denied involvement despite the evidence, and the Council is taking their word over ours." "That's insane," Sarah said. "We have the weapon signatures, the debris patterns, everything points to the Corvash." "I know," Zhang replied, "but humanity is new to the galactic community. We've only been traveling between the stars for 200 years. The older races look at us as children. They don't take us seriously. The Corvash have been in space for over 5,000 years. The Council is more worried about offending them than getting justice for our dead." Sarah felt anger building in her chest. "So what happens now?" "Now we document everything. Every piece of evidence, every sensor reading, every fragment of Corvash technology we can recover. The politicians back home are making decisions, but they're going to need perfect evidence to justify what comes next." Over the following weeks, the investigation continued. Forensic teams landed on New Eden's surface in protective suits, walking through the ruins of human civilization. They found more evidence of the Corvash attack: shell casings from their weapons, fragments of their assault craft. Most damning of all, they found the black box recorder from the colony's defense headquarters. The recording was played at Terran Command headquarters, with the full civilian government in attendance. Sarah was there as a witness, standing in the back of the room as the voices of the dead spoke one last time. Governor Maxwell Thompson's voice was calm at first, ordering the evacuation of civilians and the activation of planetary defenses. Then the first Corvash ships appeared on sensors, dozens of them, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect attack formation. "They're not responding to any hails," the defense coordinator said on the recording. "They're charging weapons. My God, they're charging weapons." Governor Thompson tried everything. He broadcast surrender offers. He begged for mercy. He explained that New Eden was a civilian colony with no military value. The Corvash response was to begin bombardment. The recording captured the screams as the first plasma bolts hit the cities. It captured the panic as millions tried to flee with nowhere to go. It captured Governor Thompson's last words, spoken as the defense headquarters shook apart around him. "To anyone who finds this, the Corvash did this. They murdered us. They murdered all of us. Please make them pay. Please don't let us die for nothing." Then static. Sarah watched as hardened military officers wiped tears from their eyes. She saw politicians who had spent their careers preaching peace and diplomacy sit with their heads in their hands. She saw the president of the Terran Federation, an elderly woman named Elena Vasquez, stand up with an expression of absolute resolve. "Send a formal demand to the Corvash Dominion," President Vasquez said, her voice cutting through the room like a knife. "They will surrender everyone involved in the planning and execution of this attack within 30 days. They will pay reparations sufficient to rebuild New Eden and compensate every family that lost someone. If they refuse or if they delay, we will consider ourselves at war." One of her advisors, a cautious man named David Chen, cleared his throat nervously. "Madam President, with respect, the Corvash military is 3 times the size of ours. If we go to war, we might lose." President Vasquez turned to look at him. Her expression was not angry, but it was absolutely certain. "Then we will lose while fighting for what's right. But I don't think we will lose. Because I think the Corvash have made a terrible mistake. They think we're weak. They think we're soft. They're about to learn that humans remember how to be monsters when we need to be." The demand was sent through official channels, broadcast on every diplomatic frequency. The Galactic Council immediately called for calm, offering to mediate. Dozens of alien species urged humanity to be patient, to trust the diplomatic process. The Corvash response came exactly 1 week later. It wasn't a formal diplomatic communication. It was a broadcast from their war prince, a massive alien with 4 arms and armor that looked more ceremonial than practical. He appeared on screens across 100 worlds, laughing. "The primitive apes make demands," the war prince said, his translator rendering his words in perfect standard English. "They threaten the mighty Corvash dominion. Should we tremble in fear?" He laughed again, a deep booming sound. "Let the weak humans cry over their lost colony. The Dominion takes what it wants, and there is nothing the children of Earth can do to stop us." The broadcast ended. Sarah watched it in the officer's lounge aboard the Defiant. Around her, every human in the room sat in absolute silence for nearly 30 seconds. Then someone spoke. It was a young ensign, barely out of training. "They're going to regret that." A senior officer, a woman with 30 years of service, nodded slowly. Yes, they are." Sarah thought about New Eden, about the families who would never see their children grow up, about the farmers who had died in their fields, about Governor Thompson begging for mercy that never came. She thought about that Corvash war prince laughing at human pain, and she knew with absolute certainty that the galaxy was about to change forever, because humanity was about to remind everyone of a simple truth. They had clawed their way to the top of the food chain on a death world called Earth. They had survived ice ages and plagues and wars so terrible they still haunted the human conscience. They had built atomic weapons and nearly destroyed themselves, then pulled back from the brink and reached for the stars instead. And now something had reminded them why they had learned to kill so efficiently in the first place. Not for conquest, not for glory, for protection, for justice, for revenge. The war prince had made his choice. Now humanity would make theirs. Every gun would fire, and the galaxy would burn. The Terran Federation did not declare war immediately. President Vasquez understood that rushing into conflict without preparation would be a disaster. Instead, she activated protocols that had been in place since humanity first encountered alien life. On Earth, massive underground factories that had been mothballed for decades suddenly roared back to life. These facilities had been built during the corporate wars, when mega-corporations had fought for control of Earth's resources. The public had been told they were decommissioned. That was a lie. Dr. James Morrison supervised the reactivation of Factory Complex 7 beneath the Australian desert. He walked through vast underground chambers filled with automated assembly lines, each one designed to produce war materials at an incredible rate. "How long until we're at full production?" asked General Patricia Hayes, who had flown in from Terran Command. 2 weeks for basic munitions and armor," Morrison replied, checking his datapad. 4 weeks for the advanced weapon systems. We've kept everything maintained just in case." Hayes nodded with satisfaction. "Good. We're going to need everything you can produce. The Navy is pulling ships out of reserve and they all need to be armed." Similar scenes played out across human space. Mars converted 3 of its terraforming facilities into shipyards. The Belt colonies, home to the best industrial workers in the solar system, began producing hull plating and engine components around the clock. Europa Station, which specialized in advanced electronics, shifted to military-grade sensor systems and weapons targeting computers. But the most significant changes happened at the outer colonies. These settlements, far from Earth's oversight, had always been more independent and sometimes more militant. They had their own defense forces, their own weapons, and their own reasons to hate the Corvash. Commander John Blake commanded the defense station orbiting New Terra, a colony world in the Outer Rim. When the call for mobilization came, he assembled his command staff and laid out the situation. "New Eden is gone," he said bluntly. "Every man, woman, and child murdered by the Corvash. The Federation is preparing for war and they're asking for volunteers from the colony militias." His second-in-command, a tough woman named Sarah Kim, spoke up immediately. "New Eden was just like us. Agricultural colony, same size, same population mix. If they hit New Eden, they could hit any of us next." Blake nodded. "Exactly. So here's what's going to happen. Every able-bodied person who wants to fight gets training. Every ship we have gets weapons mounted on it. Every resource we can spare goes to the war effort. This isn't just about revenge. This is about survival." The meeting was supposed to be about discussing options. Instead, it turned into a planning session. Within hours, New Terra's entire society began transforming into a military machine. This pattern repeated across 50 colony worlds. Humanity's frontier settlers, who had always been tough and self-reliant, became an army. They might not have formal military training, but they knew how to work hard, how to survive in hostile environments, and how to use weapons. The colonies had been dealing with pirates and raiders for years. Now they would deal with something bigger. On Earth, President Vasquez addressed a special joint session of the Terran Congress. Every representative was present, and the speech was broadcast to every human world. "We did not want this war," she began, her voice steady and clear. "We came to the stars hoping to find peace and cooperation with other intelligent species. We joined the Galactic Council in good faith. We followed their rules. We tried to be good neighbors." She paused, letting the weight of those words sink in. "The Corvish Dominion responded to our goodwill by murdering 2.3 million innocent civilians. They glassed an entire planet. They killed children who had never even seen a weapon, and when we asked for justice, they laughed at us." The Congress chamber was absolutely silent. The Galactic Council has chosen to do nothing. They call for patience. They call for diplomacy. They suggest that we should trust the same institutions that allowed this massacre to happen. Vasquez's voice grew harder. "We will not wait. We will not trust. We will act." She pulled out a document and held it up for the cameras. "I am signing Executive Order 777, the Total Mobilization Act. Every resource of the Terran Federation is now dedicated to one purpose, making the Corvash Dominion pay for what they have done. We will have justice for New Eden. We will have justice for our dead, and we will make certain that no one ever makes the mistake of attacking humanity again." The Congress erupted in applause, but Vasquez wasn't finished. "To the Galactic Council, I say this: you had your chance to deliver justice through law. You failed. Now we will deliver justice through force. To the Corvash Dominion, I say this: you called us weak. You called us primitive. You are about to learn how wrong you were. And to our own people, I say this: the road ahead will be hard. We will lose people we love. We will pay a terrible price, but we will win. Because we fight for something the Corvash cannot understand. We fight for each other." The declaration sent shockwaves through the galaxy. Alien species who had dismissed humanity as harmless suddenly began paying attention. Intelligence agencies across 100 worlds started gathering information on Terran military capabilities. What they found terrified them. Humanity had been preparing for interstellar war since their first contact with aliens 50 years ago. The peaceful diplomatic face they showed the galaxy had been real, but it had also been cover for massive military development. The corporate wars and the Martian rebellion had taught humanity hard lessons about combat, and they had not forgotten them. Ambassador Cathar of the Zilani, Concordat met with President Vasquez in a private session at the Terran Embassy on Earth. The Zilani were one of the oldest races in the galaxy, wise and cautious. Cathar had been watching human development with interest for decades. "Madam President," Cathar said, his translator rendering his clicking speech into English, "the Zilani wish to understand your intentions. The Corvash are a powerful empire. War with them will destabilize the entire sector. Surely there must be another way." Vasquez met his compound eyes without flinching. "Ambassador, let me ask you a question. If someone murdered 2.3 million Zilani, what would your people do?" Cathar was silent for a moment. "We would seek justice through the council. And if the council did nothing? If the murderers laughed at you and promised to do it again?" Another pause. Then quietly, "The Zilani would go to war." "Exactly," Vasquez said. "Every species has a line that cannot be crossed. The Corvash crossed ours. There is no going back now." Cathar shifted uncomfortably. "The Corvash fleet numbers over 8,000 warships. Your entire navy has perhaps 2,000 vessels. The mathematics are not in your favor." Vasquez smiled, and there was no warmth in it. "Ambassador, let me tell you about humanity. We spent 10,000 years killing each other on our home planet. We got very, very good at it. We built weapons that could destroy our entire world. We created tactics and strategies refined through countless wars. Then we went to the stars and tried to be better than our history." She stood and walked to the window, looking out at Earth below. "But we never forgot how to fight. We never forgot the lessons written in blood. We kept our weapons sharp and our soldiers trained just in case. The Corvash think they know what war is. They're about to learn what war looks like when humans stop holding back." As Cathar left the embassy, he sent an urgent message to the Zilani homeworld. "Recommend complete neutrality in the coming conflict. Humanity is not what we thought they were. They are predators who have been pretending to be prey. The message was intercepted by a dozen intelligence agencies. Copies spread across the galaxy within hours. Some species dismissed it as paranoia. Others began quietly moving their assets away from the war zone. Meanwhile, the Terran military continued its buildup. Ships began emerging from hidden bases scattered throughout human space. The Valkyrie-class carriers, massive vessels capable of holding 100 fighter craft each. The Hammer-class battleships designed for close-range slugging matches. The Ghost-class frigates built for stealth and electronic warfare. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the fleet assemble. Ships arrived every few hours from different sectors, each one adding to the growing armada. By the end of the first month, over 2,000 warships had gathered at Rally Point Vengeance, an empty region of space on the border of human territory. "It's the largest fleet ever assembled in human history," his tactical officer observed. "And it's still growing," Zhang nodded. "We're pulling in everything. Reserve ships, colony defense forces, even some of the corporate security vessels are joining up. By the time we move, we'll have enough firepower to crack a planet." "Do you think it will be enough?" the officer asked. Zhang considered the question carefully. "The Corvash have more ships than us. They have more experience. They have better technology in some areas, but they've never fought humans before. They don't understand how we think, how we fight. That's our advantage." He pulled up a tactical display showing Corvash territory. "They expect us to follow the normal rules of galactic warfare. Honor duels between capital ships, formal declarations before engagement, restrictions on targeting civilian infrastructure. They think war is a game with rules." Zhang's expression grew hard. "We're going to teach them that human war has only one rule: win. We'll use every dirty trick we know. We'll hit them when they're not ready. We'll target their supply lines, their communications, their morale. We'll make them afraid, and we won't stop until every person responsible for New Eden is dead or in chains." Training intensified across all human military forces. Marine units practiced boarding actions in zero gravity. Fighter pilots ran simulation after simulation, learning Corvash tactics and how to counter them. Naval crews drilled on damage control, knowing that ships would be hit and they needed to keep fighting anyway. The civilians supported the war effort with total commitment. Factories worked 3 shifts. Volunteers signed up faster than training facilities could process them. Families sent their children off to war with pride and terror mixed together. Everyone understood what was at stake. Sarah Chen, now promoted to commander and given control of a fast reconnaissance ship, attended a briefing for all ship captains. Admiral Zhang addressed them personally. "In 2 weeks we move," he said. "Operation Righteous Fury begins. We're going to hit the Corvash where it hurts fast and hard. They think we're weak. They think we'll negotiate. They're wrong on both counts." He looked around the room at the hundreds of captains, each one commanding a ship that would soon be in battle. "Some of you won't come back," Zhang said bluntly. "Some of your ships will be destroyed. Some of your crews will die. That's the reality of war. But every one of you who falls will take Corvash ships with you. Every battle we fight brings us closer to justice for New Eden. Remember those 2.3 million people. Remember that they died because the Corvash thought humanity was too weak to matter. Prove them wrong." The briefing ended, and the captains returned to their ships. Sarah stood in the hangar bay of Rally Point Vengeance, watching the organized chaos of a fleet preparing for war. Supply ships moved between vessels, transferring ammunition and spare parts. Repair crews worked around the clock fixing minor problems before the shooting started. Fighter craft launched and returned, their pilots getting used to combat flying. This was humanity's answer to the massacre of New Eden. Not words, not diplomacy, not appeals to justice that would never come. War. Total, absolute, uncompromising war. The ember of rage that had ignited when New Eden died was now a fire that burned across human space, and soon that fire would spread to the Corvash Dominion. The galaxy was about to learn a lesson. Humanity had tried peace. They had tried cooperation. They had tried to follow the rules. Now they would write new rules. Rules written in fire and blood and the wreckage of Corvash ships. The countdown to Operation Righteous Fury began. Operation Righteous Fury began at exactly 0400 hours, Terran Standard Time. 2,000 human warships made the jump to faster-than-light travel simultaneously, disappearing from Rally Point Vengeance in a cascade of distorted space. Their target was Jakara Station, a major Corvash military outpost on the border between human and Corvash space. Intelligence suggested that some of the ships involved in the New Eden massacre had been stationed there. Admiral Zhang had chosen it as the first target for that reason. This wasn't just a military strike, it was a message. The Corvash had no warning. Their long-range sensors detected the human fleet only minutes before they arrived, dropping out of faster-than-light travel in perfect attack formation. By the time Jakara Station sounded the alarm, human weapons were already firing. Commander Sarah Chen watched from the bridge of her reconnaissance ship, the Swift Arrow, as the battle began. The human fleet had split into multiple attack groups, each one targeting a different section of Corvash defenses. They're scrambling fighters, her tactical officer reported. Looks like about 200 craft launching from the station. Good, Sarah said calmly. Tell the carrier groups to release the swarm. What happened next shocked the Corvash defenders. From the human carriers, thousands of small objects launched into space. These weren't fighters. They were drones, each one the size of a small car controlled by sophisticated artificial intelligence. The Corvash had never seen anything like them. The drones moved in coordinated patterns, switching targets constantly, overwhelming the Corvash defensive fire through sheer numbers. For every drone destroyed, 3 more took its place. The Corvash fighters found themselves surrounded, unable to focus on any single target. Swarm is engaging enemy fighters, the tactical officer said. Our pilots are moving to secondary targets, the human fighter pilots, freed from having to deal with the initial wave of enemy craft, swept past the confused Corvash defenders and began attacking the station itself. They targeted weapons platforms, sensor arrays, and docking bays with precision strikes. On the station, Corvash Commander Thrak watched his defense network collapse with disbelief. He had fought in a dozen campaigns across 40 years. He had never seen tactics like this. The humans were fighting like nothing he understood. All ships engage the human fleet directly, he ordered. We outnumber them 3-1. Press the advantage. 20 Corvash cruisers moved forward to engage the human capital ships. They expected a traditional battle, ships trading fire at medium range until one side retreated. Instead, the human ships did something unexpected. They charged. The human battleship Vengeance, leading the assault group, accelerated directly toward the Corvash line at full speed. Its armor was already taking hits from Corvash plasma weapons, but the ship didn't slow down. Its captain, a veteran named Robert Thorne, had orders to break the Corvash formation, and he intended to follow those orders exactly. All power to forward shields, Thorne commanded. And someone get me a firing solution on that cruiser in the center. His weapons officer worked quickly. Target locked, sir. Firing main railguns. The Vengeance carried weapons that used magnetic acceleration to fire solid projectiles at incredible speeds. The technology was old by galactic standards, almost primitive. But what it lacked in sophistication, it made up for in raw kinetic energy. 6 metal slugs, each one weighing several tons, shot out from the Vengeance at a significant fraction of the speed of light. They crossed the distance to the Corvash cruiser in seconds. The cruiser's shields, designed to deflect energy weapons, barely slowed them down. The first slug punched through the cruiser's hull near the engine section. The second struck the bridge. The third, fourth, and fifth hit the central sections, each one creating a hole the size of a house as it passed completely through the ship. The sixth missed, sailing off into empty space. The Corvash cruiser broke apart, explosions rippling along its length as internal systems failed. Debris scattered in all directions. The other Corvash ships hesitated, shocked by the sudden destruction of one of their largest vessels. The Vengeance didn't slow down. It plowed through the Corvash formation, its guns firing constantly. Other human ships followed, breaking the neat defensive line into chaos. This is insane, Commander Thrak said, watching from the station. They're sacrificing their ships, but the human ships weren't being sacrificed. They were absorbing damage that would cripple a Corvash vessel and continuing to fight. Their armor was thick, layered, designed to take punishment. Their damage control teams worked at incredible speed, sealing breaches and rerouting systems almost as fast as they were damaged. The battle turned into a brutal close-range brawl. Ships fired at point-blank range, missiles crossed the space between vessels in seconds, and boarding pods launched from both sides. This was the kind of fight the Corvash had never experienced, and they weren't prepared for it. The boarding actions were particularly shocking. Human Marines wearing powered armor and carrying automatic weapons attacked Corvash ships with a ferocity that bordered on madness. They fought through corridors deck by deck, using tactics refined in 1,000 small conflicts across human space. Sergeant David Martinez led a 20-man team onto a Corvash destroyer. They cut through the hull with plasma torches and entered a maintenance corridor. Almost immediately, they encountered Corvash defenders. The Corvash were larger than humans, nearly 7 feet tall with 4 arms and tough scales that acted as natural armor. They were individually stronger and had been trained for combat, but they had never fought humans in close quarters. Martinez and his team moved as a unit, covering each other, using grenades and suppressing fire to control the battlefield. When a Corvash warrior charged at Martinez, he dropped low, letting his teammate shoot the alien in the side, then finished it with a burst from his rifle as it fell. "Keep moving," Martinez ordered. "We need to reach the reactor controls." The team fought through 3 more groups of defenders before reaching the engineering section. Martinez planted explosive charges on the reactor containment system, while his teammates held the entrance. "Charges set," he reported. 30 seconds to detonation. "Everyone out!" They ran back through the corridors they had just cleared, racing against the clock. Behind them, alarms blared as the Corvash crew realized what was happening. The Marines reached their boarding pod and launched just as the charges detonated. The Corvash destroyer's reactor went critical, destroying the ship from the inside out. It was one of dozens of similar actions happening across the battlefield. After 6 hours of intense combat, Commander Thrak made the hardest decision of his career. "All remaining ships retreat. Fall back to defensive position Delta 7. His second-in-command stared at him. "Commander, we still have ships. We can fight. Look at the display," Thrak snapped. "We've lost half our force. The station is crippled. If we stay, we die. At least if we retreat, we can warn the Dominion about these tactics." The surviving Corvash ships disengaged and jumped to faster-than-light travel, leaving Jakara Station to its fate. The station itself was badly damaged, its weapons destroyed, its shields offline. Admiral Zhang broadcast a message to the station commander on all frequencies. "Commander Thrak of Jakara Station, this is Admiral Richard Zhang of the Terran Federation. You have 2 options. Surrender immediately and allow us to board the station, or we will destroy it with all hands. You have 5 minutes to decide." On the station, Thrak looked at the human fleet surrounding his position. His defensive guns were gone. His ships had fled. He had 3,000 crew members still alive on the station. "Fighting would be suicide. We surrender," he transmitted. "Don't fire. We're powering down weapons and opening the docks." Human Marines boarded Jakara Station in force. They secured the crew, seized all computer systems, and began downloading military intelligence. What they found was valuable beyond their expectations. Jakara's computers contained deployment schedules, fleet compositions, and communication codes for a large section of Corvash military operations. They also found evidence confirming what everyone already knew. 3 of the ships stationed at Jakara had participated in the New Eden massacre. Their captains had recorded the attack as a training exercise, proud of their efficiency in destroying a civilian target. Admiral Zhang watched the footage once, his expression carved from stone. Then he issued orders. "Those 3 captains and their command crews are to be separated from the other prisoners. They're being transferred to the Defiant. They'll stand trial for war crimes." The Battle of Jakara Station had taken 36 hours from start to finish. The Corvash had expected it to take weeks. News of the human victory spread across the galaxy with shocking speed. On the Corvash homeworld, War Prince Kral received the reports with growing anger. How is this possible? They're primitives. They've only been in space for 200 years. His military advisor, an old warrior named Shath, studied the tactical reports carefully. "My prince, these humans fight unlike anyone we've encountered. They don't follow the established rules of warfare. They use weapons we consider outdated but employ them effectively. Their ships are built to absorb damage rather than avoid it. And their soldiers fight with a determination that borders on suicidal. Then we will crush them with numbers," Kral declared. "Send word to our allies. The Vakoth Collective, the Rendon Empire, the Seekar clans. Anyone who wants a share of human territory can join us. We will sweep across their space and burn their worlds to ash." Shath bowed, but he felt uneasy. Something about the human attack pattern worried him. They hadn't just struck to win a battle. They had struck to send a message. And the message was clear. Humanity would not stop until they had justice for New Eden. Within days, 3 other aggressive species announced their support for the Corvash Dominion. They saw an opportunity to weaken both sides and grab territory in the chaos. The war was spreading beyond the original combatants. Humanity's response was to accelerate their offensive. While diplomats on Earth dealt with the political fallout, the Terran Navy launched attacks on 6 more Corvash positions simultaneously. Each attack followed the same pattern: overwhelming initial assault, brutal close-range combat, and complete destruction or capture of the target. The Corvash began to realize they were facing an enemy that fought by entirely different rules. Human ships rammed damaged vessels to destroy them. Human Marines used tactics that seemed crazy but worked. Human commanders sacrificed pieces of their fleet to achieve objectives that traditional military thinking said weren't worth the cost. And behind every attack, driving every tactical decision, was the memory of New Eden. The humans weren't just fighting a war. They were conducting a crusade. In a secure communication channel, Admiral Zhang spoke with President Vasquez about the progress of the war. "The Corvash are calling in allies," Zhang reported. "We're now facing 4 different hostile species. Our casualty rates are increasing. Can we win?" Vasquez asked bluntly. Zhang nodded slowly. "Yes, Madam President. We can win, but the cost is going to be high. Higher than we initially projected. We're going to lose ships, lose people. Entire fleets might be destroyed before this is over. And if we don't fight, then New Eden means nothing. Then the Corvash and everyone like them will know they can kill humans without consequence. We'll spend the rest of our existence waiting for the next attack." Vasquez was silent for a moment. Then, "Continue the offensive. Do what needs to be done. We knew this would be hard. We knew people would die. But we also know why we're fighting. Make sure every soldier, every sailor, every pilot knows it too. They're fighting for New Eden. They're fighting so that massacre never happens again." "Understood, Madam President." The war continued to spread. More worlds were caught in the fighting. Refugee crises erupted as civilians fled combat zones. The Galactic Council tried repeatedly to broker peace talks, but both sides refused. The Corvash wanted unconditional human surrender. Humanity wanted justice for their dead. Neither side was willing to compromise. The galaxy was burning, and the fire showed no signs of going out. 6 months into the war, the galaxy was unrecognizable. Trade routes that had been stable for centuries were now war zones. Entire sectors evacuated as the fighting spread. The galactic economy, which had grown comfortable and predictable, crashed as uncertainty destroyed confidence. The Corvash Dominion and their allies had numbers on their side. They could replace destroyed ships faster than humanity could. But the humans had something more dangerous. They had a cause. Every human ship carried the memory of New Eden with them. Every soldier fought knowing that they were avenging murdered children. Lieutenant Commander Rachel Torres commanded the destroyer Relentless, part of a human strike force operating deep in Corvash territory. Her ship had been in continuous combat operations for 3 months, jumping from battle to battle with barely enough time to repair and resupply between engagements. "We've lost another 2 ships, her tactical officer reported after the latest skirmish. The Thunder and the Resolute. Both went down fighting, but they're gone." Rachel looked at the casualty reports. The Thunder had been commanded by her friend from the academy, Captain Michael Chen. The Resolute's captain, Sarah Kim, had saved Rachel's life 2 months ago during a boarding action. Now both were dead, along with over 1,000 crew members. "Add them to the memorial," Rachel said quietly, "and send the standard notifications to their families." The memorial was a database that every human ship maintained. Names of the fallen, how they died, what they accomplished. It grew longer every day. Some ships had memorial services every week just to keep up with the losses. But even as humans died, they kept fighting. The Corvash were learning to fear human tactics. The unpredictable attacks, the willingness to sacrifice ships to achieve objectives, the absolute refusal to surrender even when outnumbered. The war had produced stories that spread across human space, tales of heroism and sacrifice that kept morale high despite the losses. Like the Battle of Carina 7, where the corvette Defiance held off 3 Corvash cruisers for 6 hours while civilian transports evacuated the colony. The Defiance was destroyed, but not before every civilian escaped. Or the defense of Outpost Echo, where 200 Marines held against 5,000 Corvash soldiers for 3 days until reinforcements arrived. But the war was also producing darker stories. Stories of civilian casualties, stories of colonies caught in the crossfire, stories of refugees with nowhere to go. The Galactic Council was overwhelmed, trying to manage humanitarian crises across 50 star systems. Ambassador Cathar of the Zelani Concordat met with other neutral species representatives in an emergency session. The meeting room was filled with aliens of a dozen different species, all concerned about the spreading conflict. The humans refuse all peace overtures, Cathar reported. They demand complete Corvash surrender and reparations for New Eden. Nothing less will satisfy them. A delegate from the Forian Commonwealth, an aquatic species known for their pacifism, spoke up. This is madness. Millions have died already. Entire worlds have been damaged. When will they be satisfied? When the Corvash pay for their crime, Cathar replied. The humans view this as a matter of principle. They believe that if they accept anything less than complete justice, they will appear weak. And weakness, in their view, invites more attacks. And the Corvash? Another delegate asked. The Corvash will not surrender because they believe they can still win, Cathar said. Both sides are committed to total victory. This war will only end when one side is completely defeated. The meeting ended without any solutions. The neutral species could only watch as the two sides destroyed each other. On the Corvash homeworld, War Prince Kral was planning his final solution to the human problem. His military commanders had assembled the largest fleet in Corvash history, over 3,000 ships including vessels from their allies. The Grand Fleet, as it was called, would crush the human forces in one massive engagement. We will strike at the heart of human space, Kral announced to his commanders. We will attack Earth itself. Once their homeworld falls, their will to fight will collapse. The war will be over. Admiral Shath, who had advised caution from the beginning, felt obligated to speak. My prince, intelligence suggests the humans have been preparing for exactly such an attack. Earth's defenses are extensive. And if we commit our entire fleet to this offensive, we leave our own worlds vulnerable. Kral slammed one of his 4 fists on the table. The humans are weak. They have lost hundreds of ships. Their colonies are bleeding resources to support the war. They cannot maintain this level of effort much longer. One decisive blow will finish them. The Grand Fleet assembled at the Vardok Nebula, a region of space thick with gas clouds that interfered with long-range sensors. It was the perfect staging area for a massive offensive. From there, they would jump directly into human space and begin their attack on Earth. But Terran intelligence had been watching. Spy satellites, deep cover agents, and intercepted communications all pointed to the same conclusion. The Corvash were planning something big. Admiral Zhang stood in the war room at Terran Command, looking at the intelligence reports. Around him, the senior leadership of the Terran military had gathered for an emergency briefing. They're massing their fleet at Vardok, Zhang said, pointing to the star chart. Every intelligence source confirms it. This is their final push. They're going for Earth. President Vasquez, attending via secure video link, asked the critical question. Can we stop them? Zhang nodded slowly. Yes, but it's going to cost us. We'll need to commit almost our entire fleet, and we'll need to hit them at Vardok before they can organize their attack. If we let them reach Earth, they'll catch us in our own defensive positions. Better to fight them where we choose the battlefield. What are our chances? Vasquez asked. Even odds, Zhang admitted. They outnumber us significantly. But we'll have the advantage of surprise. They think they're the hunters. We're going to show them they're the prey. Orders went out across human space. Every available warship was to converge on Rally Point Vengeance and prepare for the largest space battle in human history. Ships pulled back from offensive operations. Reserve units were activated. Even damaged vessels undergoing repairs were pressed into service if they could still fight. Commander Sarah, Chen brought the swift arrow to Rally Point Vengeance and found herself surrounded by the gathered might of humanity. Over 1,800 ships filled the space around the rally point. Carriers and battleships, destroyers and frigates, every type of vessel the Terran Navy possessed. She attended the final briefing for all ship commanders, held in a massive virtual conference that included every captain in the fleet. Admiral Zhang addressed them all. In approximately 16 hours, we jumped to the Vardok Nebula, he began. The Corvash Grand Fleet is there, preparing to attack Earth. We're going to hit them first. He brought up a tactical display showing the nebula and the projected positions of Corvash forces. This is going to be brutal. They outnumber us almost 2-to-1. Many of you won't survive this battle. Some of your ships will be destroyed in the opening minutes. That's the reality we face. Zhang paused, looking at the faces of the commanders displayed on his screen. But remember why we're fighting. Remember New Eden. Remember those 2.3 million people who were murdered in their homes. Remember that the Corvash laughed at us when we asked for justice. This is our answer to that laughter. This is how we protect our future. He straightened, his voice growing stronger. Tomorrow we either win and secure humanity's place in this galaxy or we die trying. Either way, we make sure the Corvash never forget what it means to make an enemy of humanity. All ships prepare for jump. This is for New Eden! The battle cry was taken up by thousands of voices across hundreds of ships. For New Eden. 18 hours later, the human fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Vardok Nebula. The Corvash Grand Fleet was spread across a huge volume of space, their ships positioned in loose formation, while they waited for final deployment orders. They were not ready for combat. They were not ready for the fury that humanity brought with them. Admiral Zhang gave the order that would define the battle. All ships execute Plan Hammer Strike. Break their formation and engage at close range. Make them afraid. The human fleet charged forward in multiple attack groups, each one targeting a different section of the Corvash formation. The Corvash scrambled to respond, trying to organize a defense against an enemy that was already among them. The fighting was immediately intense. Ships traded fire at ranges so close that explosions from one vessel damaged others nearby. Missiles crossed the space between fleets in seconds. Fighter craft and drones swarmed through the chaos hunting for targets. On the battleship Vengeance, Captain Thorn fought his ship with savage efficiency. His vessel was taking heavy fire from 3 Corvash cruisers, but he kept pushing forward, targeting the largest enemy ship he could find. Reactor at 80% and climbing, his engineer warned. We're taking too much damage. We need to fall back and repair. Negative, Thorn said. Load special munitions. We're going after that dreadnought. The special munitions were planet-killer missiles, weapons designed to crack worlds. Using them in space combat was technically possible but incredibly dangerous. The explosions were too large, the radiation too intense. But Thorn had orders to break the Corvash fleet, and he was going to follow those orders. Missiles locked on target, his weapons officer reported. Ready to fire. Fire all tubes, Thorn commanded. 6 planet-killer missiles launched from the Vengeance, streaking toward the Corvash dreadnought. The massive enemy vessel tried to shoot them down, destroying 4. The remaining 2 hit. The explosions were visible across the entire battlefield, bright flashes of light that temporarily overwhelmed sensors. When the glare faded, the dreadnought was gone. Simply gone, along with 6 other Corvash ships that had been too close to the blast. But the Vengeance had paid a price. The radiation from the explosions washed over the ship, frying electronics and killing exposed crew members. The ship's shields failed. Its weapons went offline. Its engines sputtered and died. All hands abandon ship, Thorn ordered calmly. This is the captain. We did our job. Now save yourselves. Escape pods began launching from the dying ship. Thorn stayed on the bridge watching as his crew escaped. When the last pod was away, he sat in his command chair and waited. A Corvash cruiser, seeing the helpless human vessel, moved in to finish it off. Thorn activated the ship's self-destruct, overloading the reactor. The Vengeance exploded just as the Corvash cruiser came alongside, destroying both vessels in a final act of defiance. Similar scenes played out across the battlefield. Human ships damaged beyond repair, rammed Corvash vessels, or self-destructed to take enemies with them. The humans fought with a desperation born of absolute commitment to their cause. But the Corvash fought back. They had numbers and they used them. Human ships were surrounded and destroyed. Entire squadrons were wiped out. The casualties mounted on both sides until the space around Vardok was filled with debris and the dying. Admiral Zhang watched from the Defiant as his fleet was slowly ground down. They had hurt the Corvash badly, destroying over 1,000 enemy ships. But humanity had lost half its own fleet. The battle could still go either way. Then something unexpected happened. War Prince Kral, commanding from his flagship at the center of the Corvash formation, made a mistake. Frustrated by human resistance, he ordered his ships to close ranks and concentrate their fire. It was a reasonable tactical decision, but it created an opportunity. Zhang saw it immediately. All carriers execute Operation Final Strike. Launch everything. The human carriers, which had been hanging back and launching drones, suddenly moved forward. They released every fighter and missile they carried in one massive swarm, then accelerated directly at the Corvash flagship. Kral watched in horror as 3 human carriers, each one the size of a small city, bore down on his position. He ordered his fleet to stop them, but too many ships were out of position. The carriers crashed through his defensive line, taking terrible damage but not stopping. The carrier Valiant, commanded by Captain Jennifer Walsh, was the first to reach Kral's flagship. Her ship was burning, its armor shredded, half its crew dead, but the engines still worked and she still had control. "For New Eden," Walsh said simply, and set her ship on a collision course. The Valiant struck Kral's flagship amidships, the impact crushing both vessels. The Valiant's reactor exploded and the flagship broke apart, killing War Prince Kral and his entire command staff. With their leader dead and their formation shattered, the Corvash Grand Fleet broke. Ships began retreating in panic, jumping to faster-than-light travel without coordinating with each other. The battle became a rout. Admiral Zhang ordered pursuit, but most of his ships were too damaged. They had won, but barely. Over 900 human ships were destroyed or crippled. Tens of thousands were dead. The victory had cost them almost everything. But they had won. The Corvash Grand Fleet was destroyed. Their leadership was dead. The war had reached its turning point, and humanity, bloodied but unbroken, stood ready to finish what they had started. The news of the Battle of Vardock Nebula spread across the galaxy within hours. The Corvash Grand Fleet, the largest armada ever assembled by the Dominion, had been destroyed. War Prince Kral was dead. The Corvash military command structure was in chaos. For humanity, victory came with a terrible price. The memorial databases on surviving ships were now filled with names. Entire crews that had fought together were gone. Ships that had served with distinction for decades were nothing but debris fields. The human fleet that had gone into Vardock had been 1,800 ships strong. Only 900 had survived, and many of those were barely functional. Admiral Zhang stood on the bridge of the Defiant, looking at the casualty reports. His flagship had survived, but it would need months of repair. Around him, the remains of the human fleet were gathering damaged vessels and searching for survivors in the wreckage. "Final count is in, sir," his operations officer reported quietly. "We lost 42,000 personnel. Another 20,000 wounded. 914 ships destroyed or so damaged they'll never fight again." Zhang closed his eyes for a moment. 42,000 people. Each one a mother or father, a son or daughter, a friend or lover. Each one who had joined the fight for New Eden and would never see home again. "Start the memorial services," he said. "And send a message to Earth. Tell them we won. Tell them the cost. Tell them it was worth it." On Earth, President Vasquez received the news in her private office. She read the casualty reports, the battle summaries, the lists of destroyed ships. Then she did something she hadn't done since the war began. She put her head down on her desk and cried. She cried for the dead. She cried for the wounded. She cried for the families who would receive notifications that their loved ones were never coming home. She cried because she had ordered this, because she had committed humanity to total war, and because it had worked but cost so much. After 10 minutes, she composed herself, wiped her eyes, and called her staff. There was still work to do. In Corvash space, the Dominion was collapsing. With War Prince Kral dead and the Grand Fleet destroyed, the various Corvash factions began fighting among themselves. Some wanted to continue the war. Others wanted peace at any price. Civil conflict erupted on multiple worlds as different groups struggled for control. The Corvash allies, seeing the Dominion's weakness, began abandoning them. The Vakoth Collective signed a separate peace treaty with humanity, surrendering the ships they had contributed and paying reparations. The Rendon Empire withdrew from the conflict entirely, moving their forces back to defend their own territory. The Seekar clans tried to negotiate a favorable peace, offering to help hunt down Corvash war criminals in exchange for lenient treatment. Humanity accepted these offers, but made clear that the terms were non-negotiable. Every species that had supported the Corvash would pay. Every ship they had contributed would be accounted for. Every war crime would be prosecuted. 3 months after the Battle of Vardock, the new Corvash government sued for peace. The delegation that arrived at Earth was led by Councillor Voth, an elderly Corvash who had opposed the war from the beginning. He met with President Vasquez in a formal ceremony broadcast across the galaxy. "President Vasquez," Voth began, speaking through a translator, The Corvash Dominion acknowledges its defeat. We are prepared to discuss terms of surrender. Vasquez looked at him without sympathy. There will be no negotiation of terms, Counselor. Only acceptance. The Terran Federation demands the following: complete and unconditional surrender. All Corvash military forces to be disbanded and placed under Terran oversight. Reparations totaling 5 trillion credits to be paid over 50 years. Every individual involved in the New Eden massacre to be surrendered for trial. Corvash territory to be reduced by 40%. With the ceded worlds to be administered by neutral powers under Terran supervision. Voth listened to the terms, his four-eyed face showing a mix of shame and resignation. These terms are harsh, President Vasquez. They will reduce the Corvash to a minor power. You should have thought of that before you murdered 2.3 million civilians, Vasquez replied coldly. You have 72 hours to accept these terms. If you refuse, the Terran Navy will resume offensive operations. And this time, we won't stop until every Corvash world is under occupation. Choose wisely. The Corvash government accepted the terms 48 hours later. The formal surrender was signed aboard the Defiant with Admiral Zhang presiding. The ceremony was brief and without celebration. This was business, not victory parade. The most important part of the surrender was the handover of the Corvash officers responsible for New Eden. 17 ship captains, 32 senior officers, and 5 civilian administrators who had ordered the attack were transferred to Terran custody. They were transported to Earth under heavy guard. The trial was held at The Hague in the same courtroom where humanity had once tried its own war criminals. The proceedings were broadcast across human space and to anyone in the galaxy who wanted to watch. The prosecutors presented evidence that was overwhelming and undeniable. Recordings from the attack, orders from the Corvash command chain, testimony from survivors who had been off-world when New Eden was destroyed. The defense attorneys, appointed by the Terran government to ensure fairness, could offer little except pleas for mercy. Their clients had followed orders. They had been taught that humans were inferior. They had not understood the magnitude of their crime. The chief prosecutor, a woman named Rebecca Thompson who had lost her sister on New Eden, gave the closing argument. She stood before the court and spoke for 20 minutes about the lives that had been lost. About children who would never grow up. About dreams that would never be fulfilled. About a colony that had been peaceful and productive, destroyed for no reason except territorial ambition. These defendants claim they were following orders, Thompson said. They claim they didn't understand. But ignorance is not innocence. Following orders is not absolution. They made choices. They pressed the buttons that fired the weapons. They gave the commands that killed millions, and now they must face the consequences of those choices. The verdict was unanimous, guilty on all counts. The sentences were carried out 1 week later. The Corvash officers were executed by firing squad, a method chosen deliberately to mirror the violence they had inflicted. Some in the galaxy protested that the trials were vengeance, not justice. Humanity's response was simple. Justice delayed is justice denied. The Galactic Council had its chance to act and did nothing. Humanity had delivered the justice the Council could not or would not provide. With the war over and the Corvash defeated, humanity faced the question of what came next. The Terran military, which had grown to massive size during the war, needed to be maintained. The colonies that had been damaged needed to be rebuilt. The economy needed to recover. And humanity's relationship with the rest of the galaxy needed to be redefined. President Vasquez addressed a joint session of Congress 6 months after the surrender. Her term was almost over, and this would be one of her last major speeches. We did not want this war, she began. We entered the stars hoping for peace. We tried to be good neighbors, good citizens of the galactic community. The Corvash Dominion responded to our goodwill with mass murder, and the Galactic Council, which was supposed to maintain order, did nothing. She paused, looking around the chamber at the representatives from every human world. We learned a hard lesson. In this galaxy, strength is the only currency that matters. Words without force to back them are meaningless. Laws without enforcement are suggestions. We cannot rely on others to protect us. We must protect ourselves. She pulled out a document and held it up. I am announcing the New Eden Doctrine. From this day forward, any attack on human civilians will be considered an act of total war. Any nation, any species, any organization that harms our people will face the full military might of the Terran Federation. We will respond with overwhelming force. We will not negotiate. We will not compromise. We will have justice or we will have vengeance. The choice will be theirs. The Congress erupted in applause, but Vasquez held up her hand for silence. This doctrine is not about conquest. It's not about domination. It's about ensuring that New Eden never happens again. We will defend ourselves. We will defend our allies. And we will make certain that everyone in this galaxy understands that humanity is not weak, not helpless, and not to be trifled with. The New Eden doctrine became the foundation of human foreign policy. The Terran Federation began establishing military bases throughout the sector. The Navy, rather than being reduced to pre-war levels, was maintained at nearly full strength. Human ships patrolled trade routes, providing security that the Galactic Council could not. Smaller species, those who had been bullied by more powerful neighbors, began requesting Terran protection. Humanity offered defensive pacts, stationing ships at strategic locations throughout the sector. Some called it imperialism. Humanity called it preventing the next New Eden. The Galactic Council, humiliated by its irrelevance during the war, tried to reassert its authority. They passed resolutions condemning human militarization. They demanded that humanity reduce its fleet and dismantle its forward bases. President Vasquez's successor, President Michael Rodriguez, responded with a simple message: no. The council had its chance to maintain order, Rodriguez said in a public broadcast. It failed. Humanity will not trust its safety to an organization that allowed New Eden to happen. We will defend ourselves and we will defend our allies. If the council doesn't like that, perhaps they should have done their job in the first place. The message was clear. Humanity was now the dominant military power in the sector, and they had no intention of giving up that position. Commander Sarah Chen, promoted to captain after the war, stood at a memorial on Earth dedicated to the fallen. The memorial was a simple black wall with over 2.3 million names carved into it. Every person who died on New Eden, every soldier and sailor who died in the war that followed. She ran her fingers over some of the names, recognizing friends and comrades. Michael Chen, who had commanded the Thunder, Sarah Kim from the Resolute, Captain Jennifer Walsh, who had sacrificed herself at Vardock. So many names. So much loss. Was it worth it? A voice asked behind her. Sarah turned to see an elderly man wearing a jacket with New Eden colony patches, one of the few who had been off-world when the attack happened. My wife was on New Eden, the man continued. My 2 daughters, my grandson, all of them gone. We fought a war that cost thousands more lives. Did it change anything? Sarah thought carefully before answering. We made sure everyone knows there's a price for killing humans. We made sure the people responsible faced justice. We made sure New Eden will never be forgotten. Whether that was worth the cost, I can't say. But I know we couldn't do nothing. The man nodded slowly. My wife would have wanted justice. She was like that. Never let anyone push her around. He touched the wall, finding his family's names. I just wish it hadn't cost so much. So do I, Sarah said quietly. They stood together in silence, 2 people who had lost loved ones, paying their respects to the dead. Across the galaxy, humanity's reputation had been transformed. They were no longer seen as naive newcomers or primitive apes. They were seen as dangerous, capable, and absolutely committed to protecting their own. Trade with human worlds increased as species sought good relations with the new power. Diplomatic requests flooded into Earth from civilizations wanting alliances or protection. Some species, those with aggressive tendencies, began rethinking their foreign policies. The lesson of the Corvash Dominion was clear. Attacking humanity was suicidal. The price of aggression was total defeat. Others, more peaceful species, found in humanity a partner willing to maintain order. Human ships escorting merchant convoys. Human troops helping suppress piracy. Human diplomats mediating disputes. The role that the Galactic Council should have filled but never did effectively. 20 years after New Eden, a ceremony was held at the rebuilt colony. The planet had been terraformed again, cleansed of the radiation and devastation. New cities had been built, not exactly like the old ones, but similar in spirit. New families were moving in, starting fresh, building lives. Admiral Zhang, now retired but still respected, gave a speech at the dedication ceremony. He was old now, his hair white, his face lined with age and memories, but his voice was still strong. 20 years ago, This world was murdered, he said to the crowd of thousands gathered in the new capital city's central plaza. 2.3 million people died here. Good people. Innocent people. People who had done nothing wrong except exist where someone more powerful wanted to expand. He gestured to the city around them. We brought them justice. We made sure their deaths meant something. We changed the galaxy, but we paid a price. 60,000 military personnel died in the war. Hundreds of thousands more were wounded. Families were shattered. Lives were changed forever. Zhang paused, looking out at the audience. Many were descendants of New Eden's original settlers, children and grandchildren of survivors. Others were new colonists, drawn by the promise of a fresh start. This colony exists because good people refused to accept that might makes right. Because humans decided that justice mattered more than safety. Because we chose to fight rather than submit. New Eden died, but from its ashes we built something stronger. We built a humanity that will never again be weak, that will never again trust others to protect us, that will never again allow our people to be murdered without consequence. He raised his hand in salute to the memorial behind him, a simple stone monument bearing the names of the original New Eden's dead. To those who fell here and in the war that followed, we remember. We honor your sacrifice, and we promise that you did not die in vain. The galaxy knows now that humanity protects its own, always, forever. For New Eden. The crowd took up the cry. For New Eden! The words echoed across the rebuilt city, across the planet, across human space. A reminder and a promise, a memorial and a warning. Humanity had gone to the stars seeking peace. They had found war. They had lost innocence but gained strength. They had paid a terrible price but earned respect. And they had learned the most important lesson of all. In a dangerous galaxy, survival belongs to those strong enough to fight for it and committed enough to win. The memorial stood as testament to that truth. 2.3 million names carved in stone, a reminder of what was lost. And above the memorial, in orbit around New Eden, 300 Terran Navy ships stood watch, a reminder of what was gained. Never again would humanity be caught unprepared. Never again would they be seen as weak. Never again would anyone make the mistake of thinking that humans would not fight to protect their own. The galaxy had caught flame, and from that fire humanity had emerged transformed. Not conquerors, not tyrants, but guardians, protectors, warriors who fought not for glory but for justice. And everyone, from the smallest species to the oldest empire, knew that the price of attacking humanity was total destruction. The Corvash had learned that lesson. The galaxy had learned that lesson. New Eden would never be forgotten, and humanity would never forgive.